Hello and welcome to the Modern Monkey Mind, where we discuss contemporary challenges for our not-so-evolved brain. I'm your host, Danielle Teichner, and on today's episode, we're going to be talking about the scene zone and Facebook stalking. Have you ever found yourself left on scene? It hurts, doesn't it? The Urban Dictionary defines the scene zone as when a person just reads your messages to him or her and doesn't intend to reply you back. Being scene zoned is a common occurrence in our day and age, and something that our parents never had to deal with, especially when it came to dating. In fact, with the explosion of social media and smartphones, modern dating is vastly different in comparison to what it was as recent as 12 to 15 years ago. Let's look at this Google trend for the word scene zoned. As you can see by the bar graph, the word scene zoned reached peak popularity in June of 2014. So, does being scene zoned take you on a roller coaster of emotions? Have you felt anything from sadness to rejection to fear to frustration to anxiety or even panic? Well, you've come to the right place, my friend. In the last decade or so, humans have increasingly had a world of information at their fingertips. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter, just to name a few social media platforms, all contribute to this rising anxiety. Not all accounts are private, and it's all too tempting to check up on people. Similar to how tech companies construct targeted ads from our browsing history and session data, aka cookies, and no, not those type of cookies, we too can make deductions about our crush's whereabouts, their current emotional state, their social interactions, and whether they're asleep or awake. Yes, it is getting that creepy. But you might find yourself becoming a private eye without even really intending to do so. Worryingly, there's a possibility you might even become addicted to it. You may have called this act Facebook stalking, but lo and behold, there's a fancier term in the research literature. It's called electronic intrusion, or EI for short. Researchers Reed Tolman and Safer define electronic intrusion as the use of social media to intrude into the privacy of a dating partner and monitor their whereabouts and activities. But sometimes information can slap you in the face unexpectedly. The pain is real, and as a generation that's trying to find the one, we're quite taunted by this information. It's not just people in the development stage of a romantic relationship that are hurting. You may have a painful falling out with friends, only to be constantly reminded of your loss every time you open Facebook or Instagram. Similarly, if you're in a post-breakup stage, it may only take a photo of your ex on a mutual friend's account to undo the stitches of your broken heart. Sure, you can unblock or unfriend them, but you probably won't do that due to curiosity's sake. So you end up unfollowing them only to find yourself checking up on them in the wee hours of the night. If you do have the strength to block them, you might find yourself asking or tempted to ask your friends to commit electronic intrusion for you. Researchers Reed Tolman and Safer found that attachment style influences intrusive electronic dating behaviors. In a nutshell, if you've been subjected to insecure attachments, a relationship grounded in fear rather than love in your childhood, then you're more likely to commit electronic intrusion. The study also found that social media may increase risk for anxiously attached college students to engage in electronic intrusion for anxiety relief. So the ironic part about EI is that it doesn't actually really bring relief, or at least not personally I've found it to bring relief. In fact, it can worsen your condition. But we keep doing it. We keep doing it, don't we? Yep. Because like any addiction, it's a vicious cycle. And here's a little diagram of the cycle of addiction to illustrate my point. And if you just replace substance abuse with electronic intrusion, you better believe we got ourselves a problem here. But let's go back in time to the 1980s. There were no smartphones or social media platforms, and the internet only existed in small pockets on university campuses. If you wanted to electronically intrude on somebody, you had to do some really creepy things to get information. Things like driving past a person's house to see if they're home, or going to their workplace during the day. These physical acts of privacy intrusion actually required you to leave the couch to do them. And they're not really socially acceptable for the average person. But now we live in a day and age where we don't even need to leave the house or directly contact a person to get information about them. This makes these acts less creepy, more normalized, more accessible, and most importantly, harder to resist. Self-control, I would argue, is on the decline. And admittedly, I still haven't mastered a reasonable bedtime. But I'd almost guarantee it was probably easier in our parents' social media free day and age. And while social media can be used for a number of positive things like activism, crowdfunding, building friendships, strengthening international relations, education, without clear personal goals or self-control, it can be pretty time-sucking. And you're probably watching this video whilst you procrastinate doing something else. You have to consciously and deliberately detach yourself from this stream of information. You can turn your weaknesses into your greatest strength. One possible solution would be to use gamification, which is the act of applying game elements to non-game contexts to strengthen behaviors. Specifically, the app called Habitica, which is in its simplest form, a digital to-do list. The app could provide you some delicious hits of dopamine every time you resist the temptation to commit electronic intrusion. You can even call a friend or family member for support and get them to keep you accountable by the app. The research shows that in order to build a healthy habit, it's not enough to simply create a cue, routine, and reward loop. You need to repeat the loop enough times so that you start craving those good feelings. So just like you craved electronic intrusion, you can flip it on its head and start to crave the good feelings that are associated with self-control. If you find that those suggestions just aren't cutting it for you, you might have insecure attachments from your childhood that are now affecting you in your adult life. And I certainly did. I found that Pete Walker's book, Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving, really helpful. It helped me realize that every time I was in the scene zone, I started to have an emotional flashback. Pete Walker describes an emotional flashback as a sudden and often prolonged regression to the overwhelming feeling states of being abused/abandoned. These feeling states can include overwhelming fear, shame, alienation, rage, grief, and depression. They also include unnecessary triggering of our fight or flight instincts. Unlike PTSD, emotional flashbacks do not have a visual component. So I couldn't actually figure out what the heck was going wrong with me. Every time I was scene zoned, essentially I was having an emotional flashback to a time in my childhood where I felt abandoned, isolated. I felt like I'd let somebody down. I felt like I was in trouble. I just felt like a storm of feelings. In Pete Walker's book, he has a 13-step guide to help you speak to yourself when you're having an emotional flashback. Step 1, say to yourself, I'm having a flashback. Step 2, remind yourself, I feel afraid, but I'm not in danger. Step 3, own your right and need to have boundaries. Step 4, speak reassuringly to your inner child. Step 5, deconstruct eternity thinking. Step 6, remind yourself that you're in an adult body. Step 7, ease back into your body. Step 8, resist the inner critic's drasticizing and catastrophizing. Step 9, allow yourself to grieve. Step 10, cultivate safe relationships and seek support. Step 11, learn to identify the types of triggers that led to flashbacks. Step 12, figure out what you're flashing back to. And step 13, be patient with a slow recovery process. It's important to know that I'm not a psychologist. I'm just a person who has a history of insecure attachment and found Facebook stalking as a way to regulate my emotions when I was in the scene zone. That was not helpful to me long term, and Pete Walker's book has been super duper helpful, along with fortnightly therapy sessions. So if you are feeling that you're struggling, I would suggest reaching out to a friend or chatting to a psychologist. There's definitely no shame, and I've learned so much. And that's why I just wanted to share that with you today. So we've come to the end of the video. I really hope it's been helpful for you. Thank you so much for watching. And please leave any comments in the comment box below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.